What is going on, everyone? Welcome on into Open Ice Hits. It's finally here. The time is finally here where we are going to see postseason hockey. We're going to see teams hate each other for 7 straight games. It's going to be so damn fun. I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait. It's almost here. Although I feel like that Saturday matchup between the Capitals and the Bruins it's been teased for like 3,000 years, it feels like, even though it's been, I don't know, like 24 hours. But, Durso, how you feeling on this morning, man?
I'm feeling good. I'm with you. It's playoff time. Let's go.
I know. It's crazy. It feels like it snuck right up on us, and, I mean, it did considering they only played 56 games. But I think once – I'm amped up. Obviously, I'm, like, ready to rock. But I think when I see the puck drop for the first time, it'll hit different. And also – I at least know here in Philadelphia there's been a lot less restrictions and whatnot for fans. And I'm just, I'm excited to see that back into buildings, which is crazy because one of the best divisions we talked about all year. It's funny how this worked is, that North Division. And I wanted to see it every single night. And now that it's the only division without fans, it's actually hard for me to get into it. So I'm curious how that all impacts my viewing experience, I guess.
Yeah, I guess so. You know what's weird for me actually so far? Because you already mentioned it. They've teased that game 1 of Boston-Washington for Saturday. And as excited as I am to start it, I already made plans to watch it with a buddy of mine who is a Boston fan. And I'm like, I just need to sit down and watch some good hockey after all the stuff I had to watch during the year. But that's the only game that's scheduled so far. So it's really weird to watch. Like, they don't even have the rest of that series scheduled. There's nothing else. There's actually, ironically enough, there's a regular season game on Saturday afternoon before the playoff game on Saturday night. It's just weird.
It's bizarre,
so I'm like waiting
man.
for the rest. Like, it's hard to look at it and get fully excited when you don't know which playoff games you're watching on, I guess, the rest of Saturday, if there even is anything. Sunday, Monday.
You're totally gonna watch the regular season game too, aren't you? You're definitely gonna watch that nonsense, useless regular season game just to warm yourself up for that puck drop at 7:15 or whatever it is. I know you are, damn it.
Well, isn't it an Edmonton game?
Yeah, but at that point, are they even going to play anyone? You know what I mean?
I asked that question after Mcdavid already got to 100 points, and they're still playing him. So
yeah, I guess this isn't the NBA. But, hey, before we kick things off, congratulations. What is this, year 4 now completed for covering the Flyers, or am I wrong with what year it is?
No, it's the 4th for 97.3.
Okay.
I've actually been going down for like 7 years, though. So
okay. Well, congrats on all of it,
7. Man. Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, it's awesome.
It was, and I did put the whole thing out. I tweeted about it. I put it on Facebook, things like that. And it's like, this year was weird to go down there and start the year with nobody there, literally almost nobody there. I mean, I think I said there might have been 100 people in the building on the season opener, and that's like staff and media members and team personnel. And that was about it. And it was weird, but by the end of the year, we got to a point where we were back upstairs to an extent, not quite the press box, kind of still a makeshift deal, and then a few thousand fans. And like you said, it sounds like we're going to be back to, at least in terms of capacity and all that stuff, we're going to be close to normal when October rolls around. And that'll be fun to get back into a building where everything feels normal again. But I still treat it the same way I did no matter what. I mean, I know the performances on the ice weren't the greatest this year, but it's still a privilege to watch the players that come into the building every single night. And it was awesome to be there as often as I was, because I really didn't expect much this year, and I got more than I bargained for sure.
Yeah, it was a nightmare scenario, but not for all these teams.
Just in terms of presence, though. Like,
yeah.
I didn't expect to be there much at all this year, given everything going on in the world. And sure enough,
I thought you meant in terms of the production on the ice.
No. I got way more than I bargained for in terms of just being allowed to be there. I thought for sure it was like, I might, if I'm lucky, I'll get to half of the home games. I was at 25 out of 28. And those 3 were my call, not theirs. So
right.
it's like,
no, it's awesome, man.
Pretty
congrats.
awesome.
I love watching, love watching your, watching. I'm so used to saying that because I always watch a lot of so used to reading your stuff.
I thought you meant watching me when I do my radio spots, though.
Oh, well, yeah, that's true. That's true. That is true. But I love reading your takeaways and whatnot. It's always phenomenal.
I've been getting a lot of that. I've gotten a few comments about that, like, thanks for your takeaways. Thanks for being honest about what's going on and things like that. And
definitely.
that's what the job is. You know,
yeah. All right.
got to
So
be honest about it. Let's get into it, though.
absolutely. Yeah, let's get into it. Let's talk some hockey. Let's start with the East. All right, and we're going to basically, kind of give our what we're excited for kind of thing, or what we're looking at, or, things that intrigue us for these specific series. And I guess we'll start us off with the Penguins and the Islanders, start us off with the rivals of our hometown Flyers.
Sure.
And we'll start with the Penguins. And how about you throw yours out there first on what you're excited for most about this series?
About this series. All right. So that's what I thought was. I was going to say, I don't have two things about the Penguins specifically, but you're picking a good spot because this is obviously the teams that I got exposed to the most. This is the only teams I got to watch in person this year. For me, for Pittsburgh, this is what I pulled out, and I can talk about, we've already talked a lot on this show about Crosby and all that stuff like that. And I could pull that out, and that's probably traditional. It's what a lot of people would say. The thing I'm actually most looking forward to seeing in this series are the newcomers to the Pittsburgh lineup: Jeff Carter, Kasperi Kapanen, guys who haven't played in a playoff series with this team. And they were heating up at the right time. I mean, Jeff Carter had a 4-goal game just a couple of weeks ago, maybe a week ago. It was like right at the end of the season. And it's like, what timing for him to get going. Kasperi Kapanen was kind of picking up steam somewhere in the portion of early to mid-March, then got hurt a little bit, came back, still showed a lot of potential even in the most recent games I saw him at. And it's like, this could be a really dangerous offensive team. I think their obvious question is, can Tristan Jarry carry them if they need that? But they've got a lot of offensive firepower, and I didn't even mention Crosby when talking about that. I just mentioned the two guys that they've added realistically, but they've got so much more beyond that. And I don't think anybody really saw them here. Like, I know I didn't, not seeing them as the number one. I'm not saying I didn't see them in the playoffs, but as the number one, as the division winners, no way. I didn't think that at all, but here they are. And that's part of the product of it. And obviously, I think the other intriguing thing maybe for the whole scope of the playoffs, not just this series, is the whole Ron Hextall, Brian Burke dynamic, like that whole thing going on mid-season and how they have turned it around. I just love how they've turned it around to an extent. I mean, I don't love it from the Flyers standpoint, obviously, but like it's
I think
so
it was really just their presence so much, which I'm not trying to knock. Like, you're right, they made acquisitions, but to even put themselves in that position to make a trade for Jeff Carter, they had to do something significant in the regular season. So that turnaround happened before just picking up the phone to LA and saying, let's go get a Carter or let's go make a move. So I think just the fact that there was a shock factor in the locker room of, this is different now. This is a statement. I don't want this to end. I want to continue to make these playoff runs. So it's crazy that just them being there before even making phone calls to make trades was what kind of sparked this into where they are now. And you're right. I thought all along 4 seed was in play. 1, no way.
Sure. And this goes to the point that Brian Burke made about not in his entire career of doing this, not having a Sidney Crosby, right? This is what makes them go out and say, go get a Jeff Carter at this time of year at the deadline. They knew they had a shot, and they weren't leading the division at the time. They were just in the playoff picture. It was pretty, didn't we all kind of think it was a 2-horse race at that point? Maybe 3 even with Boston, but we're like, Washington and the Islanders are up there. We thought the Islanders might win the division at that rate. And instead, they're playing them as the 4 seed as opposed to being the division winners. And Pittsburgh just got hot at the right time and got the pieces in place and started to get healthy too. That was another thing. They've gotten healthy too. I mean, they've got just about everything in place. I think I do think that I think there's one question for just about every single team in this divisional race at this point. And certainly I already brought it up for me. It's whether Jarry can be the guy who carries them, because they've had series like this before. I think about their series with the Flyers almost 10 years ago now. It's crazy to think it's that long ago, but where neither goalie could stop anything, but they had so much offensive firepower. They were scoring. There were games where they scored 10 goals in a game.
Yeah, it was
because
like
they were that good offensively.
9-7, 9-8. It was miserable.
Yeah, it was pretty rough, but they have that, and it's a lot of the same guys. Don't get me wrong, but it's of course it's some of the same guys. When you have 2 guys who are that good that can be around for that long, sure, So that's it for me. Is that just that if they can get the goaltending on top of the production that they've had, they're going to be tough out. They're really going to be a tough out.
Yeah, I agree completely. So I'm with you with the Crosby thing. I think it's inevitable that we're all excited to see what version of Sidney Crosby we're going to get, considering who he is, the track record, Stanley Cup. Yeah, we know the story of Crosby, even though I really wanted to put that down. You also somewhat touched on mine with Jari. I wanted to, look at the net minding because that wasn't so smooth, and then picked it up. And is he going to be able to deliver? They've had
Yeah.
Marc-Andre Fleury, then they had a great run from Matt Murray, and then the whole Matt Murray experience went sideways completely. So are you going to be able to get that level of play in the crease that allows you to feel comfortable, or is there going to be some softies? So I figured if you hit on that as well, I did have I bullet pointed a bunch of stuff I'm excited for in general. And how about,
that's okay. I had an Islanders point too.
how about Malkin though? I mean, honestly, it's like we talk about Crosby, you talk about Cardinal. What about Malkin? Who is Malkin this season, and is he going to have the same level of impact that we've seen in years past?
I got lucky, I suppose, because beginning of the season, everybody's healthy to start the year, right? So he plays the first 2 games of the season, and he came back from injury just in time to play in the 2 games in Philly at the end of the year too. I don't know what it is, and I'm not trying to downplay what kind of player he is, but just about every time I've watched him in person, at least this year specifically, he's been almost invisible in those games. I mean, maybe a couple of good plays, but like Crosby's still nearing that best in the world category. Like you see the skill set. He makes one play every game that I've seen him just about where you go, wow, how many players in the league can do that? And Malkin just kind of blends, and it's really weird. And that's why I think that's why I pointed out the other guys, Jeff Carter, Kasperi Kapanen, on top of some of the other guys they already have, Jake Gensel and Brian Rust and guys like that. Every single one of those guys has been dangerous at a point in time during the games I've seen them in person. And I go, yeah, they could have scored 1 or 2 in this game, no question about it. Every single time I see them, they could have scored 1 or 2. And sometimes they already have scored 1, maybe 2 in certain situations. Malkin just hasn't been that guy for me.
You know what's crazy?
If he does get hot, then obviously watch out. But
oh yeah,
I've just always found him invisible, and I go, I know he's an elite player in the league. I know he is a guy who's probably going to be in the Hall of Fame at the end of his career, and I go, he just doesn't like. Maybe it's because he's not on the same level as Crosby. The Crosby is so much of an all-world, out of this world type of player that Malkin just has games where he blends in more often than not.
I think it's the lack of scoring this year in terms of goal
scoring.
Yeah,
that too.
Because he has 28. I'm just laughing because imagine us looking at Malkin the way that we do. And I think it's justifiable because maybe the bar is set so high for him for what he's done in the past. He's got 28 points in 33 games. I mean, it's not that egregious, but
right.
You look at some of the scoring numbers in terms of goals. He has 8 goals this year in the 33 games. You got 42, 33, 28, 25. I mean, you're just used to him putting the puck in the net so much more. You alluded to it, though, injuries and all, and maybe if he's not playing 100%, let's say he's just banged up and he's out there just at 70%, but he wants to play, so that's impacting the way that he's out there on the ice. It's just fascinating because it's not there. It doesn't pop as much, but you're seriously 5 points away from being a point per game, and maybe there's a lot to do with Crosby. Maybe it's a lot to do with how good he was playing before. It is fascinating, though, and I guess it would be crazy if he stepped it up because now you're talking about a team that is number 1 without their top dog, no second to top dog, just really performing it. It would be scary. But how about the Islanders? Because I think that's a team that you can question, can they get over the hump? Now I'm fascinated with their acquisitions at the deadline. You mentioned that for the Penguins.
That's good.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what that does for the Islanders, especially with their captain out and not available to play. So Palmieri, Zajac, what are their roles? And just their non-sexy style of play. Can they suffocate the Penguins? Can Barry Trotz's scheme? Can they counter that Penguins' skill with their own skill in Barzell and whatnot? But can that trap in the neutral zone, can that cluster everything for the Penguins to allow the Islanders to attack?
Well, I think that's a great point because they have not been, from, I guess, the production side of it, nearly as notable as other acquisitions around the league, too. Like I mentioned, Jeff Carter having a 4-goal game. I don't know if Palmieri has 4 goals in his entire time since getting traded. Zajac was a healthy scratch at one point in time over the recent weeks. Like, it just happens that way. And it's like, we thought that these were supposed to be the reinforcements that made them better, that added that veteran presence. And, you got guys who are in and out of the lineup or not producing as much. And I know that that's kind of their style, but that's a great one. For me, you know, in series like this, and once the playoffs start, great players find a way to make themselves even more noticeable and step up. I felt that way about Matt Barzal last season. I really want to see it again this season. I want to see that he's not just a flash in the pan who had one really strong postseason and made everybody kind of turn their attention to him. And he's had moments in the regular season that say that that's not the case. He'll continue to be a great player, but I really want to see it in a playoff series. And I think that this is his opportunity to, when you take away some of the guys, like you mentioned, that have been hurt or that they're not getting back during the playoffs, this is his opportunity to really kind of make himself the face of the franchise for good. And, you know, I would love to see if he has that kind of series again on top of those other guys. And I think also one of the other things I guess I'll point out about them also is their goaltending dynamic. It's not that their goaltending is a question mark. It's the way that Barry Trotz goes about playing his goalies to see whether we see an overload of Semyon Varlamov in that series, or do we get a healthy dose of both? Do we see Ilya Sorokin, who has been really good this year, but I want to see if he goes with both or sticks to one like he has in the past sometimes, or how it'll work, because they used both last season to get to where they were. It's not like they had one and they said, let's just ride it out with the guy and go from there. They probably wouldn't have won a round or 2 rounds or gotten to the point they did in the conference finals if they did do that. They had to go back and forth to kind of get the hot hand. So that's kind of another dynamic that I'm interested in from that series.
I love it. I love that one for sure. And the one thing that you mentioned with Barzal and all is, you know, we saw this with Travis Konechny, right? Where last year he was phenomenal all regular season long, and then the emphasis in the playoffs of a 7-game series and the stress level that you have when you go up against their number one defenseman all the time and they make sure it's a living hell for you and they take away time and space. I'm not comparing those two because I think that there's a gap for sure involved with those two players I brought up. But if you take away Anders Lee, that's another player that you need to drill heavily on. How does someone like Chris Letang or whatever the Penguins elect to do to make it a really tough day at the office for him? How is he going to be able to react, and what's he going to be able to do? My guess is he goes end-to-end, puts it through his skates around, scores top shelf, and we get a beauty that's played on NHL highlights all day long on NHL Network. But, you know, I'm interested to see when the level is focused on you in a 7-game series with the number one D core that is, you know, heavily making sure they know where you are every second you're on the ice. It is different. I think he's got the skill and the power to definitely punch him in the jaw and counterpunch, but I want to see it.
And special teams, too. I mean, if the Islanders are a disciplined team and you don't give that Pittsburgh power play an opportunity, who knows? They might be the better 5-on-5 team in that regard because they are used to playing at 5-on-5 so much in their game, as opposed to Pittsburgh, who does play in games where they get a lot of special teams time both ways. And that could be a disaster for them. So I'd be very curious about that as well.
What's your gut tell you with this one? Because I kind of think that, look, it's a coaching duel. I think Barry Trotz, if you're just looking at coach by coach, I think Barry Trotz.
This is a great one.
I think Barry Trotz gets the advantage for me, but one is so scheme-based and the other is so heavily skill-based. That's not to take away. The Penguins have a scheme, obviously, but you know how it's played out that way. I think the Penguins are going to be able to get through that. That's just my gut feel.
I also think the Penguins are going to get through it. I think it's a long series, and I think that for a change, since it's not what we talked about last year at all, home ice advantage matters this time. So I think that actually plays into it, and that's all I'll say about it. I'm not going to give you an official prediction.
Sure.
But I will tell you, long series, and Pittsburgh finds a way to edge them out. Not by much, but they do.
Are you taking a shot at Islanders fans, or not really?
No, I'm saying I think Pittsburgh having the extra home game matters.
Okay.
Not a shot at Islanders fans at all.
They're going to say no one would show up because who the hell likes the Islanders anyway?
No, I actually think that they could draw a decent crowd, especially now that they're getting a guy who I think is, I hate to call him the new Tavares, but I think like he is their, Barzal is like their new Tavares, the guy who's going to be their superstar player that draws people.
Did he sign a recent bridge deal, or am I going crazy? Or did he go long term? I forget. I felt like
I'd have to look it back up, but it was it was a whole big deal. I think he did go mildly. It wasn't crazy long term, but I think he did signed for multiple years because of the fact that it was a whole saga. He almost didn't start the season on time.
Yeah, I'm searching up right now. He signed a 3-year, $21 million deal.
There we go, 3 years. That's what I thought. I wanted to say 3 to 4, but I wasn't completely sure.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So we're on the same page there with the Penguins. We think they're going to be able to handle business. And how about Caps Bruins, man? This thing's going to be a dogfight. This is going to be crazy. I guess where we begin, I'll go with I'll start with my takeaway here with this. And it's crazy that it seems like it's a common theme here with what did teams add. But I'll tell you what, as much as we despise the Bruins, there's nothing more that I like right now than this Taylor Hall story. My man is on fire. He's scoring goals from awesome angles, and it's sad. It's honestly sad to hear him speak about what's going on with Jack Eichel. It's like I feel like I'm watching somebody who gets a big, like, just gets out of jail or just gets out of, like, I hate to even go this far, but like you're kidnapped for 20 years and like you finally, like, I'm not kidnapped anymore. I like just seeing Taylor Hall's expression, watching him have fun playing hockey, watching him score goals. Man, I hate the Bruins, but I'm loving me some Taylor Hall right now.
Well, then I'll just piggyback off of it because it was one of mine too. The best way I can describe it truthfully, and I agree with it 1,000%, because I was texting with my buddy who's a Boston fan the other day, and I'm watching a game with him on Saturday. And I turn around and I even said something. I'm like, I haven't seen that kind of play from Taylor Hall in the game winner he had earlier this week. I haven't seen that from him in maybe 3 to 4 years.
That was gross.
I know. And his first 2 words, or his first word, I guess, because it would apply as one, back to me was difference maker. And it's the truth. I mean, he could be a difference maker for the Boston Bruins. I mentioned to you, kind of hinted earlier when we were talking about the last series, I think there's one question mark with every team in the East Division. The one I think that is the exception might be Boston. I really don't know that I can find a reason that they would lose a series right now. Their defense has played well.
How about
their
depth?
Goaltending
the depth scoring? Does that still
that
scare
might
you?
be the only concern. But Hall's making me change my mind on that. We've already talked about that on the show before. Hall's making me change my mind on that a little bit. And basically, if they're healthy enough, if that secondary scoring is there, I mean, we've talked a little bit about some of the other guys who have been around all year and have done some things, whether it's power play or otherwise, like Nick Ritchie, or you think about if a Charlie Coyle gets going or a Jake DeBrusk gets going in the right spot, and guys like that or David Krejci for that matter, even that top line can be so dangerous. And now that you have Taylor Hall as part of the equation, and maybe get Krejci going with him or somebody else going with him and things like that, their top 6 might be good enough, and you need the depth scoring from the bottom 6 now, but I don't feel like they're a one-line team anymore. And that's significant. I think that takes a step in the right direction. Defensively, I like them. Goaltending wise, I like them. They even, in my opinion, they actually probably have 3 goalies who could step in and play well, which is kind of a significant little anecdote when you look at how this season has gone and having guys who are prepared for just about anything. So I really like their team. I'm going to jump ahead maybe a little bit and spoil it. I know we haven't gotten to the Washington side yet, but I have Boston winning this series.
Okay. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case. Just both of them, though, is experienced at this point. It's like you have 2 teams that have those veteran leaders that you could rely on, and they've been around the block. They've both won championships as of recent, even though I guess at this point the Bruins, but they went to the Stanley Cup Finals and went to Game 7 recently. They have experienced all of the emotions of a deep playoff run before they got to the promised land, and they both fell short. So there's a lot on there, and special teams is going to be monstrous in this series. I mean, the Bruins could be automatic at times, and guess what? So can Alexander Ovechkin on the left half wall, taking one-timers as well. So you're going to have to stay out of the box. I wonder with the Capitals, and maybe this is going out too far, maybe I'm reaching a little bit, but one of the things I wanted to bring up was Tom Wilson recently stated that he was a little surprised by the reaction of what happened. I'm like, really, dude? You're surprised? Why are you surprised? I wonder, though, how much of the league took notice, or is it out of sight, out of mind? Are the Bruins going to care what happened against the Rangers, or is that out of sight, out of mind? Or are they pissed off that it keeps happening and someone needs to teach them a lesson, or are they focused too much about hey, don't worry about him. Let's worry about our own game. If we start focusing on Wilson, that takes away from us. I'm fascinated by the dynamic of what just happened with Wilson. Repeat offender. He said he was shocked at the league, that everyone was that upset about it. Or are they going to not worry about that because that takes away from what the Bruins want to do? How is Tom Wilson going to impact this series?
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't think, well, for Boston's sake, it better not impact it too much because of the fact that I think if you start thinking too much about it, you're going to get away from the task at hand and you may not win the series as a result of that.
Right.
So I don't think they care to actually go out and do something about it. I do think there's a dynamic to it, though, because there's already bad blood between these two and it doesn't involve Tom Wilson completely. I mean, there were incidents. There was a game not long ago between these two and they're guys going after each other. Garnet Hathaway was in the middle of all of it, stirring the pot and doing all that type of stuff. And it's like, you're going to get some bad blood. You're going to get some really good physicality. This is probably, in my mind, probably the best series we're going to get for that type of stuff because I think these two teams already hate each other the way we want them to. I don't know that the Pittsburgh Penguins and the New York Islanders hate each other like that the way we want to going into a series. Like, it might build over the course of the series, but I don't know if it's going into it like that. Like, I think game one is probably more mild-mannered and trying to take care of things than a game 6 would be. I think from game one, get to a TV to watch this series because I think that you've got firepower on both sides, like you mentioned with special teams. You've got physicality on both sides. You've got players who are designed to play the game that way. And I think that that's going to lead to some bad blood early. And I
How
think
do you
that's
feel
the exciting
about?
part.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. How do you feel about net minding for Washington, though? Advantage Boston for sure.
Yeah, and well, not only that, so I guess, I mean, my second point or my point on Washington was just Ovechkin in general, because I think watching Ovechkin in the playoffs is something different. But I kind of wonder, one of my big questions for them is, and goaltending's involved in this, are they just healthy enough? I mean, they were missing a lot of guys down the stretch. Are they healthy enough? Are they even going to get Samsonov back in time for the playoffs? So does that mean you're not even starting the guy who would be making his first playoff appearance? You know, in that sense, like someone's making their first playoff appearance, but it might not be the guy we thought in game one. So is Vitek Vanacek able to do what he needs to do? Especially when you figure that, gee, I wonder who's going to be going in goal for Boston. Oh, wait, it's obvious who's going to be going in goal for Boston. It's going to be Tuukka Rask. It's like a guy who's been there, done that. You know, everything that you would need from their goaltending. Like, Boston will have it. I don't know if Washington will, and that's really a big question. Yeah. So, but I question Washington more even on the whole of, do you have the pieces back and healthy that you may need to actually compete with this team on paper? And can you get what you need from the guys beyond that if those guys aren't up to speed? And I don't know. I think there was too many guys that I don't know they're going to get that, especially when you figure, will everybody be back? You know, they still don't have, I think as Kuznetsov's still on the COVID list. Ovechkin just came back and played in one game. Is that enough? Will they have TJ Oshie back from injury because he was hurt late in the season? Like, things like that. Are those guys going to be good enough? Because I don't think Boston has any questions about health, at least to their top guys. Like, these are really the top guys for Washington, and I don't think Boston has any questions when it comes to their top 6 or their goalie or their top defensive players. They're pretty much a nearly healthy team going into the playoffs.
Yeah, that's a great point. I don't know what version of Alexander Ovechkin we are going to get. If you're going to get a 70% version, which you might be getting, and that's still going to be unbelievable because his 100% is so damn lethal. But, yeah, you're right. That could limit the production. And I just randomly thought about this as we were discussing it because I brought up the coaching matchup in the other series. Lavi or Bruce Cassidy? Which coach gets the edge here, you think? Or is it almost an even matched coaching thing? It's just, once again, maybe a little different on how they approach it. But to me it's a push. Yeah. Yeah, but you talk about how chippy this is going to get. I think Lavi has that. I think Cassidy has his own way of allowing your players to know when to kind of cross that line. Like, I think Lavi, because of his passion, play with some jam, the chewing the gum, the flipping the tables, all of it. You just see that. I think Bruce Cassidy does have that, but he just does it in a more calm down way where the veterans almost maybe like look back at him and it's like instead of a fiery, you see it in his face, maybe it's more of a head tilt, like a tilt of acknowledgement of, you know. You know, I know. We'll take that next stride together in the physicality department or whatever the case may be. But it'll be interesting to see those two kind of counter each other from the coaching perspective. I also have the Bruins, by the way. I think the Bruins are going to be able to get that one done. So on to the North. How about this? The Leafs and the Habs. That's going to be amazing. Obviously, when you look at this, the Toronto Maple Leafs have been rocking with that top spot with the North pretty much all year long, and we've talked about them on this podcast from start to now as we groove into the playoffs, and it's been the same thing. Are they going to be able to get over the hump? So I think that's pretty much where we begin with this series is, are they finally going to be able to win that series? Are they finally going to get the production? What is Matthews going to look like? What is Mitch Marner? How about John Tavares? Just the core that you look at with this Toronto Maple Leafs team that we've seen all year long. Are they going to, William Nylander, are they going to all be able to be on the same page? There's going to be a lot of pressure involved. You know what it's going to be like what if they lose game one and they're down 0-1? Are they going to be able to keep the emotions in check? Because there's a lot of pressure on them to go out and win a playoff series.
I'll limit it to one guy for me. I mean, I just can't wait to see Austin Matthews in this series. You know, I think you're right, though. I mean, the big thing is, do they actually start on the path to getting not just, I mean, obviously, I think you got to get through the first round first and foremost if you're this team.
Goaltending health, by the way, huge.
Yeah. Yep. For sure. And not only that, but you're right. For how many years have we been saying this about Toronto, and they're kind of getting their shot. And to me, I don't feel like this is as close on paper, but we said that about Pittsburgh, Montreal a year ago, and that didn't turn out to be. I mean, I guess it was a close series, but like in hindsight, it wasn't to an extent too. I mean, Montreal really came in and did what they had to do to win that series, to then get out of the qualifiers and get into the first round of the playoffs. So even though, so it looks like a mismatch, these games and the amount, I think the other dynamic is the amount of times the North has played each other already. Like, you know, this isn't just the 8 times like everybody else has. There's at least 1, maybe 2 more games that you can say they go head to head. And what does that do going into the series? How do they match up? How healthy is everybody? How ready to go is everybody after playing all that? And even the dynamic of, you know, technically Toronto's not done their regular season yet. They still have 1 more game, and then they're going to play in the playoffs. So it's like, does that do anything when Montreal's finished or whenever, you know, anybody else is finished? You know what I mean? Like, how long does somebody have to sit and wait before they get back into a game? And does that change things? You know, so that's one for me. And I guess I'll just jump right into my Montreal question really quick, because you kind of mentioned, is this where Toronto gets over the hump and starts going on a run? Does Montreal's youth steal the show again? You know, because that was kind of the story last season, was Nick Suzuki and Kokoniemi and guys like that we were really impressed with, that kind of came in and all of a sudden made them look like a formidable opponent. That, let's this way, I think a lot of us actually had them here to an extent. We all kind of were like, yeah, they could be a playoff team. Sure, they could. You know, I think we knew that there was a clear 2 teams that we thought were going to be there for sure, but we're like, if the other 2 are up for grabs and there's only 5 teams going for it, they could certainly be there. Absolutely. And now you throw in a Cole Caulfield into that too, and he's going to be part of this. And what does that do for them? And can they get even more of a youth injection in that sense? So I wonder if they actually have firepower that can compete with a team that can score as well as Toronto can, but at the same time has been known to get into games where sometimes the scoring runs high. And will that be a factor?
Yeah, and I forgot too. With I think Foligno. I'm looking up now. I'm trying to find out
all the acquisitions. Yeah,
yeah. I'm trying to figure out their updated status though, because he ended up getting injured. You still have the whole Zach Hyman debacle that went down with the hit. But it looks like this is as of 3 days ago. Zach Hyman is practicing with the Leafs in a regular blue sweater. But then I also saw something. I don't know. I'm trying to just Google it on the
Riley
fly,
Nash was playing too. So
Riley Nash. So just in terms of health, you know, can this team – but I even think, you know, which is crazy, but I still think that they're the better team, even with a few banged up here and there. I think the most important question, though, is in between the pipes. You know, what are you going to get there? Freddie Anderson, they have been waiting and questioning, when are you going to see anything Freddie Anderson related for so much time now? And He's always been a question mark in that city. I think this year he finally started to solidify himself. And to be fair, it's always a wait for the playoffs and see with this team anyway, but it did seem like there was some more comfortableness, if that even makes sense, with Freddie Anderson, more so than ever before in his career. Then he gets injured. Now you're throwing in random guys, and they're going on 10-game win streaks. It's just crazy. But even with the injury, I think in this series, they still have enough firepower to execute. The young guns for Canadians, though, for the Habs, yeah, and I'm biased because I'm a Cole Caulfieldsman, and I loved him at the draft, and I wanted him over Cam York, although I like Cam York, and you need defensemen for the Flyers. But when I see him go out there and score those 2 overtime winners, I want to see if this kid has the it factor on the big stage nice and early in his career. Some of these guys, they shine no matter how big the moment is. And for him to just get thrown into the NHL, hey, kid, have at it, score 2 overtime game winners, and then now it's the playoffs. Imagine if he finds a way to bury one in overtime in game 2, in game 3. I just think this kid has the it factor. He finds the back of the net. So I want to specifically dial heavy into Cole Caulfield, not because I want to stick it to the Flyers because I was screaming for him anyway, but I think the kid's a stud, man. I think the kid is like a future legit stud that is going to score so many damn goals in this league. And I just imagine, here you are, you get the call up, you play a handful of regular season games at the end of the year, and then you got to go play Toronto in a playoff series when they are the team to beat. They are the favorite. They are the squad. And you go out there and, I want to see him specifically. I'm excited for him. I think he's going to be a legit player in this league.
Yeah, I am too, and I think it's like I think we're both kind of in agreement. We probably have Toronto winning the series, but I don't think it's a short series. I think this is a tighter one than people think.
Sort of, like you mentioned the Flyers' previous series against the Habs. While it was close in terms of long, like it went 6, right?
Yes.
So there's times where I think series go 6, which is long, but I don't know if it plays that way, if that makes sense. It could be where, whoever wins in 6 clearly was in control, but the team that won 2, fought hard, but it doesn't feel as competitive as a 6-game series plays out, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think the problem with the comparison you're making with that particular series anyway, you're right about how 6-game series can feel that way. I think the problem with that comparison was that the Flyers didn't win a game by more than a goal, or they won one by more than a goal, and it was 2-0, and you were still kind of sitting there going that nothing was certain toward the end of that game. So that's another thing about it. Like, I feel like that was a close 6-game series because it could have easily shifted the other way without much changing, right? So that's kind of where I'm at. I don't know if we get that per se, but I do think I do have it going 6. And I think that because it goes 6, you go into a game 6, at least thinking from Montreal's standpoint, if something works out the right way, this is going to a 7th, and that makes it even closer. Then you're 1 game winner take all, and that's who moves on. I think it would be crazy if we got to that point, because just thinking about the possibility of one of these 2 prolific markets in the North Division having to play 1 game to decide a series, I think that would be outstanding, but I do think Toronto's a better team.
Yeah, and another guy I can't wait to see too is Tyler Toffoli.
Yeah, it's a great one. Yep.
I did not realize he almost had 30 goals this year. And I know early on he was
outstanding.
It was all like Vancouver, and Vancouver fans were like, what? We let this guy go, and now he's just backstabbing us, scoring all these goals against us. But, man, Tyler Toffoli's a fun watch. So, all right, we both agree with the Leafs there. On to the Oilers and Jets. And as much as hockey fans as we are, and I enjoy a team like Winnipeg, and, they make a trade for Dubois, and they get rid of Laine and all. Let's be realistic. The Oilers are the show here, all right? We want to see McDavid. We want to see Draisaitl. We want to see Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. Even though, you know what? I'm lying. Shut up, Brodes. No one's here to see Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. We're here to see Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid. There's no ands, if, buts about it. No one cares about Scheifele. No one cares about the other guys. It's about the 2-man show that we want to see dominate and score 10 points a game. Go ahead. Your thoughts.
I was gonna say I care a little bit about Mark Scheifele, but whatever. Okay, fine.
But not really though.
No, I mean my first point from the whole thing is does McDavid continue this pace in the playoffs? Like that's my first one too. I mean, fair enough. No, I think what I have, and this actually is a really good segue because I think that this is one of those. This is another series I think goes 6, but this might be one of those 6 that you go, oh, Edmonton's more in control through the series. They just kind of have a couple of games where they don't finish the job. I think that's more of what it is. Like I do definitely see Edmonton winning this series, and I think that because from the Winnipeg side, my point was the Kyle Connor, Mark Scheifele dynamic. I feel like they're behind just about every goal they score anymore. Can they actually steal a couple of games by themselves to make it a little bit more interesting than what it could be? And I don't, without trying, like McDavid's been outstanding, phenomenal this year. I mean, he got to 100. I knew when it was coming because they were on a 2-man advantage. When he had 99, it's like, what do you think's going to happen with 2 men, when the other team's 2 men down?
Could you imagine if they scored and he didn't get any assists or something? He's like the
no,
one guy.
It was pretty obvious in that moment they were finding a way to get it to him,
sure.
So he had some involvement with it. But I tweeted out as soon as he got to the 100, which was what, game 53? I'm laughing about it still. Game 53. But I tweeted out then, I'm like, this is the best player in the world. This is the best player in the world. And I don't think it's an argument anymore. It just is. It's fact. And yet there's still some dynamic to it where we go, this is what we thought a year ago. They were going to be the 5 playing a team like Chicago, or like, oh, that I think actually last year when I was putting stuff out like that, I would put predictions out on Twitter or something like that. I think I had that as a sweep, a 3-game sweep, and they lost the 3. I don't know. Didn't they get swept instead?
Ballsy by you.
Yeah. Well, but I'm like, McDavid's so much better. Like I can't see how Chicago's going to win this series, and they did. It was really weird, and so that's kind of the case. It's like you wonder if they have a few games where that creeps up on them again, maybe gets in their heads. I think they should be better than that. I think they should easily move on in this series. I'm already looking ahead to the possibilities. I told you. And I'll make sure I get this in before we finish up today. The second round scenario that I think I wouldn't mind seeing, the league would love to see, and you're going to get fired up for.
Well, I'll tell you what. I know they definitely don't want to see the Winnipeg Jets market outbeat Connor McDavid. Not that the Edmonton Oilers have some huge market, but in terms of marketing Connor McDavid over anyone on the Winnipeg Jets, I'll tell you the NHL definitely does not want to see the Jets win. And look, they're a good team. They're a good, sound team. They're just not a sexy team.
Right. Well, I think to your point, too, it's fair to look at the Toronto-Montreal series and go, win-win for markets. Like in terms, I'm sure that there's a team, like I think I'd like to see Austin Matthews be the guy who moves on, than the young players on Montreal side. But from a market standpoint, yeah, it's kind of a win-win. And it's weird though to talk about like that, because this is the one where I just mentioned in the Pittsburgh Islanders series, home ice advantage, that fans are allowed back in. Some are getting closer and closer to adding more people to the buildings. This one's not changing. There's going to be no fans there. So you lose that market in that sense. Like we all used to see it. If Toronto was playing in a game 7, it's not just the near 20,000 inside. It's the thousands of others that are standing outside watching it too. That's not happening this year. So that's a little bit of a loss.
I hate to admit this, and maybe I'm wrong. I'm just basing this off of my gut feel right now. But I do think that I will be watching all of these other playoff series. I'll flip to a North game, and of course, I'm going to watch the Maple Leafs. I'm going to watch these guys play, but I will lose a lot. It's
going to lose something.
Yeah, I am going to lose a lot because even watching baseball with like even the Phillies or the Texas Rangers or the Atlanta Braves, those 2 teams specifically have full capacity back. You're telling me we're going to go from 25, 20, or it's not going to be that way in the NHL, but you get X amount of fans screaming after a goal, and then you're playing the sirens of the World Juniors that you constantly heard in Edmonton or something, and there's no fans, or it's a fake crowd noise. So it's going to be wild.
Even down to a couple recent games, if Montreal scores a goal and you hear their goal horn and then the song afterwards, which is not even, like it's not like they pick some song that's out there. Like this is their own creation, which fits so perfectly in that arena anyway. It's like, that there is a loss when you're not hearing real fans, and it's the pumped in noise and things like that. Like there is a loss to that, and that'll be really, That'll be strange. Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
sure. Yeah, no doubt about it. All right, so we both like the Oilers in that series, and we'll move on to the Central here.
Yeah, do we want to start to go a little bit more rapid fire with
Yeah,
these to get them all
yeah,
in?
yeah, for sure. Yep.
I know that these two divisions are probably I don't want to say the least sexy out of them because there's good teams in there, but I think like we kind of already had this. We've already kind of had this West talk already to an extent, like who we thought. Like we kind of said we're penciling this matchup in,
Definitely.
and we don't even know. We don't even know who's playing each other yet in the West to begin with. But we kind of already have an idea. So let's just hit the Central really quick.
Yeah, for the Central, for me, with like Carolina and Nashville. Nashville kind of had a really tough season, and then finally just like found a way to grind through it all and get that 4 seed. I guess real quickly for me, and maybe this is out there, and it's weird because I did not plan for it to go this way, but I'm just curious on how Rob Brindamore has this team going. Like you could talk about other top guys and producing and scoring a lot of goals and whatnot, but this is a team that they I don't know how to really describe it. I don't want to say it the wrong way, so I don't want to go off on like a weird statement there, but I just Rob Brindamore having this team prepared to take that step as a franchise and being a number 1 seed. Like, you're the top dog in this division, even though in theory Tampa going back-to-back is a storyline and they're probably the overall more prepared team to do it. You're the number 1 seed, so you have to protect this and make a statement of, hey, we are the number 1 seed. Will Rob Brindamore have the team clicking to do it? That's kind of my thoughts on it.
Yeah, it's a good point. And they are certainly in new territory by being a number 1 now. I can't wait to see the Sebastian Aho line in playoffs again. They were outstanding last season going in, and I really like watching them play. I mean, it's really as simple as that. I think that they're outstanding. I'm going to kind of take a little different approach to what you were saying, because you're right. Like, how ready are the Carolina Hurricanes for this role of being the division winners, the top seed in this division, knowing the way the dynamic of the playoffs is? I kind of actually look at this series and go, Nashville had a lot to play for down the stretch. And when you have a lot to play for down the stretch, you're more prepared for the stiff competition at the playoffs is because you've already been doing it. And they showed they could keep up with the Carolina Hurricanes in those final couple of games. And it wasn't like Carolina was sitting there going, there's nothing left to play for. They still had to kind of play down the stretch to clinch the division to an extent, up until maybe about the last 2 games they played. And that might have been the last ones against Nashville. But Nashville's coming in firing on good, on really good terms right here. Like, they're playing really well. I almost chalk this one up to, is there an upset alert brewing in that sense? Because Nashville has been down that road with some players that are on that team. I think of the Philip Forsbergs, Victor Arvidssons, Roman Josis, guys like that, who I go, it wasn't that long ago that everybody was kind of like, nah, Nashville can't be the team that goes to the Stanley Cup final. They're not going to be the team that goes. And they continued to surprise people. And they were a good team, but I feel like there was never that full convincing that they were going to be the team that actually had a shot to win the cup, especially as they went through some of the teams they did in the playoffs. Anaheim was a little bit of a surprise that year. They think they played Edmonton at one point in time. It's like, all that type of stuff. I think Edmonton had Anaheim, but everybody looked at Edmonton that year even and went, oh, it's going to be them. Obviously it's going to be them, right? No, it ended up being Nashville. Like, I think that there's actually a potential upset brewing with this one. I don't think it's going to happen. I think Carolina wins, but I do think that there's something to that. I really do.
And that's fine. I think that there is, because when you were actually speaking, I thought you were going to say the opposite. So I'm going to counter just a tad. And, you talk about how hard you had to play. And I think maybe a few episodes back, we kind of, I don't know if it was with Nashville, but the same style of conversation brewed. And look, when you have to go full throttle and leave everything out there to get to the playoffs, sometimes there's a fatigue factor. It's like we had to put so much energy into every regular season game that by the time you get to the playoffs, you kind of left everything out on the tank. You're left on E, if you will. So
yeah.
Is that in play? So I thought that's where you were going to go, but you hit me with the other, which is also true though. You're intense. You're ready. You're always in playoff mode because if you lose, you're going to go home, kind of thing. So that there's 2 ways to look at it, and we'll see which way that they respond. So with Tampa and Panthers, can Tampa continue to be the dominating force with all of their skill that they have pretty much? Can they support back-to-back championships. That's kind of my question. With the Panthers, the whole thing with Ekblad, I never thought that they would even be still in this position, so I'll give them credit. But that's a huge loss, and I just don't think they have the full-on firepower to compete with the Tampa Bay team individual-wise and as a team-wise. I just think Tampa's the better squad. But your quick thoughts there before we go to the West.
Yeah, no, for me, actually really like Florida's top line also, and Barkov's going to be a guy to watch.
So underrated. So underrated.
Yeah.
But here's the thing I always laugh about, though. If you're always the underrated, are you underrated? Because he's always, I feel every year, like, you know who's underrated? Barkov. And here I am being that guy who does it. But if you're always that underrated guy, are you underrated?
Yeah, I guess. I know where you're going there. My Tampa point actually is that, are they getting reinforcements? Are they going to get these pieces that we talked about before, like, or that have been talked about all year, not able to play? Oh, but by playoff time, they'll be back, right? Like, if they get Nikita Kucherov back, how much of a game changer is that? You know,
are people going to be pissed due to the technicality side of things with the salary cap?
Probably a little bit, but you know, that is what it is. I mean, they've worked around it the entire year anyway, and a lot of teams have been playing that game.
Yeah, be mad at the league, not the team, kind of thing, right?
Right, and not only that, I mean, I'm kind of with you on this one. We've already touched on it a little bit, so I'm not going to stay too long on it. But I think Tampa's the better team here. I was a little surprised that they finished third, to be honest. I don't think there's in this series, I don't feel like there's as much of a home ice advantage. This is kind of like a back and forth, go wherever you go. Like, they're so close to each other anyway. It's not impossible to think.
Florida has no fans. Now we can take a shot at that.
Yeah, okay.
It'll probably be Tampa Bay. Honestly, Tampa Bay fans in the Florida arena.
That's my thing. And not only that, but I'm just curious to see. I feel like Tampa will get better as the series goes along and turn that into something. So let's get to the West.
Yeah, you hit me with your hypothetical that you were talking about that I'd love. Hit me with that.
Okay, sure. So assuming the West is what it is, and we've already kind of talked about penciling it in. I've already talked about this before too, that don't sleep on Minnesota by any stretch. Like they're a sleeper to me. So I would say don't overlook them. Could you imagine it? And this, to me, I think the league would love this. The way it positions itself, and this is a complete 1,000% possibility if everything plays the right way. If you had out of the East, Pittsburgh and Washington, which means you get Crosby versus Ovechkin. If you had out of the North, Toronto and Edmonton, which means you get McDavid versus Matthews. If you got out of the West, Vegas and Colorado, who, by the way, are the only two teams left challenging for the President's Trophy. So they're two of the most sound teams in the league. And out of the Central, you had Carolina, Tampa Bay, which is kind of the new up-and-coming team in that division versus, or so-called in that division. It's not really that division all the time, against the defending champs. Like, my response to that is, can we just get the games, like, can the ESPN deal start early, like, and get these players marketed?
As amazing as that's going to be, there's going to be one thing that screws it up. And maybe, yeah, maybe it's not. Maybe 1000%. Screw it up isn't even the right word, because who knows? Maybe that team that wins makes that next series entertaining. Like, wow, I would have never saw that coming. You know, like, who knows? You mentioned the Wild. What if the Wild end up winning, and then the Wild gives Vegas a run for their money in that second round, and then it's like, whoa, they're up 3-1 in a series, and what's going on here?
I wrote it that way, and I wrote it down like, oh, yeah. You know, we've got, like, this would be great if we could actually.
That's too chalk. Oh, you know what I mean?
No, not only that, but we both already said we think Boston's winning against Washington.
Yeah, you're right.
So that ruins it anyway. Like, and I don't think that would change anything. Like, I think a Pittsburgh-Boston series would be outstanding to go for the Final Four.
Hell yeah.
But at the same time, I'm like, do we pull a singular player from Boston, or we just say that line? You know, like, it's those three guys. It's never one player off that. Like, we don't just pick Bergeron or pick Marchand.
I think Marchand probably.
I think Pasternak's the guy.
I think he's the better. If you're looking at, like, all right, let's pretend it's on NBC, right? And they show the graphics. I think Marchand's like physical, like, hey, it's Brad Marchand. Probably pops the most out of those three. But Paster's the better player.
Believe it or not, I think they actually probably pull Bergeron because he's the captain. Like,
maybe.
For the graphic, yes.
And this is the first year that he's been the captain since Char's been there, so maybe there is a dynamic of that.
Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, the fact that you can grab any of them, though, is for sure. So, Yeah.
Does this mean enough talk? Let's get to the hockey. That's the playoff hockey that's about to happen.
That's pretty much what we're saying here. Yes. I think it's
Yes.
funny, though, with Blues being the 4th seed. It's like, look, that team couldn't win a damn game at home for a big stretch of time and all. Like, what the hell is going on? Do we kind of just rule them out when we look at this, which is funny because they just won the Stanley Cup, and we kind of look at them as like the ugly whatever. It's like the
ugly duckling.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah. Whatever. Yeah, you got me. But
I guess. I mean, I don't know. I didn't have anything with. I didn't even have a point for them, to be honest. Like when I wrote it down, I assume. I don't know if this is going to be the case. I wrote it down assuming they play Vegas, and I had 2 Vegas points because assuming that they do, it's the Alex Petrangelo's on the other side of this matchup thing for one, and then I think we just talk about Vegas. Like, is this where Vegas's next run begins versus everything else? And it's like, we're not even talking about St. Louis. So watch that be the upset alert, you know?
Yeah, look, it's the NHL. It's not the NBA,
Yeah.
as I alluded to before. You can see, look, the LA Kings as the 8th seed won the Stanley Cup, and Jonathan Quick, he did what he needed to do. So it's crazy. But, dude, I'm excited for it. I can't
Let's do
wait. I'm stoked. We got playoff hockey.
I can't wait because I know you're going to be texting me nonstop throughout the playoffs because it'll be this game's going nuts. What's going on with this?
So I bring my iPad. Like there's a TV in the the Fanatic, but I'm hosting on the Fanatic 7 to 10 p.m. on Saturday. So you bet your ass I'm having my iPad up right in front of my screen while I'm on I do it all the time with the Phils and whatnot. Like during the afternoon, I'm gonna be just blasting Capitals, Bruins while I'm on the. I got to. I can't not watch. You know what I'm saying?
Just wait until we get deep into this because who knows? Who knows?
I know it's gonna get wild, dude. We might start fighting each other. What? Why would we do that? I don't know. Thank you.
I said we were. I said we were going to watch a couple games together. But
I thought we were going to start fighting each other. I don't know.
No, we're not going to fight each other. We agreed on a lot of this stuff.
That's right. That's right. Who knows though? Maybe we disagree later on.
We're not going to fight like that. We're not going to have an argument like that. I don't think. I
can't
know. See it.
The emotions the emotions run high when it's the postseason, Durso.
All right.
Thank you everyone so much for listening, and we will see you next time breaking down playoff puck.